Hi, so I'm going to be talking about my art piece, where I was inspired and what it means in relation to social work and the book that I'm referencing. So, my painting is inspired by the character Eileen Jones from Moon of the Crested Snow. She is the elder of the community and knows all of the traditions and rituals that they perform. So I thought her character was very significant as she is sort of like the knowledge of Anishinaabe culture, and the community would look to her for that wisdom and guidance. So my painting is based off of all of the wrongdoings done to Indigenous people and what could have been for them had they experienced a proper life with no oppression, no assimilation. They were just left to be who they were. And I just thought it was really important that with Eileen's passing, all of the Indigenous knowledge that she carried passed with her. And this was really important to the community's survival, and they now were without that. So this represents colonization and assimilation, how younger generations that aren't versed in this knowledge and tradition now knew nothing, and unless they were taught by elders, when the elders pass away, the community is left with no knowledge of their past culture and practices. So starting with the left half of my painting, this side is supposed to represent where Indigenous people are today in Canadian society. I used the black and white and gray background to sort of represent how what was done to Indigenous people is very black and white, like it's very clear what was done, but there's a lot of gray area, a lot of area that's kind of covered up, kind of just not addressed and just forgotten about in what was done to them. I also included the Band-Aid on the image to represent how a lot of what they did was never fixed, never made amends for. They just kind of covered it up and acted like they made up for it when they just apologized, like the Canadian government just apologized, but yet the same wrongdoings are still being done to Indigenous communities, and nothing has really been resolved or fixed or made up for. The blood represents the blood on Canadians' hands for what they did, and also just sort of the blood of like killing the Indigenous people's culture, just destroying their ways of life as they imposed Western culture onto them. So in the very bottom left corner, I put the quote of "The only good Indians are the dead Indians." So this just represents how Canadians view Indigenous people, as they like to say nowadays that they accept them, that they're equal. They're really not. So I just thought that was really important. The image above that is showing children at Indian residential schools, showing them praying. This is something that is not a part of Indigenous culture. They are not Christian, but of course Christianity was forced onto them. So it just kind of is a really sad image actually, because it's just nothing they would have normally done themselves, but they're being told that this is the right way of life, this is the only way to live. The next image shows intergenerational trauma. So it shows two parents creating one child in the middle. And I left the color on this picture just to really show that. The other two I left black and white to sort of show like the black and white concept on this side was supposed to show like how they killed Indigenous culture. So there's really no life, there's no color to it. I just left color on the Canadian flag with the blood, the teardrop showing, the sadness and the hurt and pain and trauma that they carry. And also in this image, because it just shows that the two parents coming together as one created this child, but the child carries what both of the parents carry as well. So all the pain and trauma they went through, the child will experience, and it's just an ongoing cycle for generations. The last image at the top represents assimilation. As you can see, the Indigenous child dressed in traditional regalia and then assimilated to Western culture, into Western clothing and pose, to sort of show that they did kill the Indigenous culture in this child. So the image at the top reads, "Kill the Indian, save the man, kill the colonizer, save the land." So I thought that was a very powerful image to include, because this is just the colonizer side saying, must kill the Indian and save the man. Like, that is the right way to do things when it's just their opinion. While for indigenous people, they're not selfish, they're not taking from anyone, they're just protecting the land and their cultures and values when it's being taken from them. So I just thought it was important to see it reversed, as, they're not violent, they actually invited colonizers into their space, into their land, as we've seen in Moon the Crusted Snow. And when that happens, they just take over and take advantage, and it's really, really disgusting and sad. So moving on to the right side of the painting, so I included the green background to sort of show like flourishing life. Within indigenous culture, they are one with the land. It's not them and the land separately. It's everything is one in indigenous culture, animals, plants, and people. You must give back to the earth for the earth to give to you. So I just included the green background. I included some flowers to show and butterflies to show like life and what could have been for indigenous people if only they weren't colonized. So just all of the images show them, the interconnectedness of them with their community and their people, with the animals. You can see them feeding each other, you can see them giving thanks to the animals, communicating with the animals, showing that they are not above them, they are equal to them. Every component of life is important and nothing is taken for granted or taken advantage of. And then I included the Anishinaabe bird in the middle to represent their culture, as well as a braid, how they would wear their hair, earring, and the headdress with the feathers to just show their culture, show what we don't see because they've been assimilated, show what they don't present themselves as anymore, even though it's how they would considering their culture. So in the bottom right corner, I included a quote from Ojibwe language. So I wrote it in Ojibwe, but I'm going to speak it in English because I don't know how to pronounce it. So it just says, "Creator bless me this day to have good thoughts, to see good things in a person, to hear good things from a person, to talk good to a person, so that I can walk with others in a good way. Thank you, Great Spirit." And I really liked the contrast of this quote to the other quote I used on the other side, because it just really represents that their culture has depth and meaning, and to take that all away from them and to take their language away from them is just awful. And I don't understand how one could do that to someone else for their own selfish needs. It's just very disgusting. So for the right side, I just wanted to show and express what could have been for indigenous culture, indigenous people. And the left side just shows what the reality is, the harsh, sad reality is for them. And for social workers, we need to move toward the right side, toward deinstitutionalizing colonial structures and barriers, and moving toward a future where we allow indigenous culture to flourish and to hopefully bring back what was lost in their culture in hopes to have it be practiced regularly and normalized.